When you think playable boss DLC, you might not assume an entire game would be delivered for free to everyone who bought the original game. It sounds like a small level pack, not a year's worth of workmanship with its own soundtrack, story, levels, upgrades, items, and in-depth mechanics. But they did it. Yacht Club Games are giving their next 3 to 5 years of work for absolutely free to anyone who bought Shovel Knight, and that is absolutely insane. Seriously, I can't understand how these people not bankrupt. But with the money from post-Kickstarter donations and the game's purchases, they keep going, I guess. And with King of Cards quickly approaching, I wanted to take a look at what kind of experience can we expect from King Knight by analyzing the fundamentals of all campaigns so far. Let me start by setting up some rules I'll go by. First, Specter Knight is my favorite campaign and Plague is my least. You'll see some pretty biased stuff, but that's how opinions work, bucko. I don't know how can I even do this without expressing my opinions. Second, I will mark the game by certain categories. 1. What is the setting? By that I mean, what's the reason for playing? Why does the level progression work like it does? How does the overworld work and why it works the way it does as you go? 2. What's the thing? Each game has something to it gameplay wise. A big main mechanic that enables different gameplay methods to move and fight. So, what does each campaign do with this idea? 3. How does the game treat items? You'll see what I mean when we get there. Each game makes use of distribution of items and unlockables very differently. It's kinda interesting, you'll get it when I get there. Nice. 4. How does replayability feel like or is brought up in the game? Each of the games offer a new game plus mode after returning to a beaten save file, but offer a couple extra things after finishing the main campaign. We'll see how each game treats those and a few other things in this category. 5. What significance do bosses have? Now, this sounds odd at first, but every game has a very different feel to a final checkpoint in a level. I'll detail that per game and also explain what purpose do extra encounters, either forced or in the overworlds, have on the playthrough. Those are the 5 categories I'll now go into detail about per game. I'll go per category, going through the games in order of release, and then sum up said category in a few more words. After the 5 categories, I'm gonna have some closing thoughts on each campaign and how they are overall, have the results clear to the eye, and then say what I generally expect from the upcoming King Knight. Timestamps in the description if it's important for some reason. Let's get going. Setting. Shovel of Hope was the team's vision for a retro revival. He had the most backstory and love put into his campaign and the most viral enthusiasm. The game is titled after Shovel Knight, and the game is made as a pure-hearted retro revival. For that, the setting is appropriate, and you'll see this as a main point in a lot of how I present Shovel's campaign. Shovel Knight is a standardish, lovable story of a knight. It takes place in a once peaceful land where evil forces recently took control of people's lives by setting up giant contraptions and buildings, I guess. Shovel Knight is recovering from a loss, and in a burst of denial, decides to go after the Enchantress to truly understand what happens to his girlfriend that fateful day, partner, who cares. The setting is a start to a heroic tale for a town with lovable characters where society is happy on the outdoors, but underneath it's a bit gloomy and a place to specifically cheer up more than just live life. The dethroned king and a rejected dancer are sitting together at the bar. Shovel Knight is just a happy heroic tale. Plague of Shadows is a spin-off in mine. Yacht Club made it clear that this isn't canon, just a second campaign, and so it was their start on making extra campaigns for the game. It's almost like they ported the ideas and just converted them and did the simple Megamind level of changing the base idea. Instead of saving the world, you are working to conquer it. The ending is also identical, but hey, why spoil a movie or the game for no reason? It's a quest to dominate your fellow evil knights and becoming stronger than the Enchantress herself. A quest of power by a silly scientist, messing with his co-workers, doing experiments and silly interactions with everything. It's a comedic story in the existing world of the earlier campaigns, a new twist on every NPC and item, and just expanding on an amazing universe of places while still staying very much like the original with some of the levels. Specter of Torment is a prequel, not a spin-off, a canonical prequel. It doesn't try to tie up loose ends though from Shovel Knight, because Shovel Knight didn't try to make those, but it just extends and jokes. It gives seemingly sourceless bits that are so much fun when that connection snaps, and instead of reversing some NPC interactions, it expands on their life and plunges you back into the lovable world of Shovel Knight. The Tower of Fate sounds like a gloomy concept to be a part of, but all the NPCs here are just glad to be part of the project, happy to be invited, and just have a good time overall. It's Bowser's minions combined with Nocturne Alley sort of deal. It's a very different approach, but it's still very fun to explore. The one interesting thing is that unlike the two other campaigns, this hub world is the only non-level area in the game. There's no SMB freestyle map or even post-level segments. You're always back in the town and every extra encounter is forced, scripted and happens there, unlike the other games. So those were the settings to each game. Shovel Knight is the start of an heroic adventure, Plague is a spin-off with all the right lines in all the right places, and Specter is a grim and grin look at the established world of the two previous games that builds up, for better or for best. Now, let's finally talk gameplay. Shovel of Hope is a very bouncy game. His shovel is meant to have the punch of the Castlevania whip, the tight movement controls of Samus, and some other tiny bits, but overall, he was a very agile character, with a very high jump and an important and simple DuckTales hop strike down. And that's what an action platforming character should be. Yes, in terms of character, he was planned the most, but if you compare the core idea, not to the other campaigns, but the other platformers, Shovel Knight is but a perfect vessel for a retro-style hero. Good movement, offense, and learning curve where you can master his mechanics. Pogoing, jump, cancelling your attacks, knowing when to only attack standing up, understanding gold armor, stun locking a boss. Shovel Knight's design is suited for any playstyle you end up trying, trial and error, or mastering a mechanic quickly. The game can get infuriating, but that's me being bad. But this is what these games had back then. You can't bomb rush through everything. You need to take a second and examine the area, and Shovel Knight punishes players who can't understand that. Every stage is an adventure of its own, understanding its main gimmick, especially in some of the later levels, for good and for worse, and mastering it once and for all up until the boss. Plague of Shadows is weird as hell. If Cuphead didn't come out a few days ago, I would not have been able to properly describe how Plague Knight plays out, because I couldn't properly understand what kind of platformer did Plague Knight play as, what did it even feel like. But Plague Knight is a scary experiment. The controls are wild when you start. The first level took me quite a while, and the first thing I get right when I get new unlocks is a safe float burst, which seems promising but actually cripples chain jumps, a very intricate mechanic for the late game. The game has very simple and powerful tools that just work, but it is always an option to try some new ideas. The game plays its finest after you beat it, when it's not soul crushing to lose money bags and you can just mess around with everything. Cuphead clarified this to me because, yeah, the base shooting works well, but why not try 30 other ideas that only might work and change up the flow of the game? I think the main issue with this is that the player will get too scared to try those out while I was going through the game, and that problem also pops up later, and we'll get into that. Specter of Torment is a quick, action-packed stompfest. There's no need to make a build-up for this. This game is challenging but never gets infuriating, well, and somehow makes the base mechanic of purely dash slashing interesting, without the stage gimmicks becoming too obnoxious. They're all usually enemies or tiny obstacles, but they all fit the theme very well, and make the game a more consistent experience with, I think, no downtime. Yeah, I like all the stages. And lets the players get used to the base controls at any pace, by having both all levels unlocked from the very start and having all levels not be too obnoxiously different from one another. When writing these three parts, I really had to stop myself at various places because I had to keep a key element for the next topic that matters a ton to level designs and changes drastically between those three characters. We need to talk items. Each game handles relics, curios, or arcana. I'll just call it items for now. Each game handles items very differently. Shovel of Hope, like I mentioned earlier, was made with major nostalgia in mind. Whenever someone discusses what they love about Mega Man, the boss items and quick kills are a staple of the franchise, and Shovel Knight takes that mentality of key items in games a bit further. Items like the Dust Knuckles are a major advantage over players who don't have it, and that's kind of a weird sentence to hear in 2017, but again, more of a retro thing. This game treats items as secrets and hides them that way, and does so part of a journey as a hero. Plague of Shadows gives zero shits about items. I have yet to properly use an item as either an advantageous technique or any situation just for fun. Useful items in Plague Knight are presented as worthless, traded to more wanted items by Plague Knight, and I felt like these items serve almost no purpose. The bomb/burst combo, as well as health recovery being separated from any item but its own thing, which was clever. Those two just overshadow any relic Plague has, and the fact that spamming one makes you recharge the entire thing to use anything again doesn't make me want to experiment with relics at all. I don't understand what did they do other than to be fun that one time you use them, but that's it. But Specter of Torment is a stomp fest again, and the game plays like it in all the ways. Items are powerful, menacing damage dealers. There aren't new ways to swing at the nearest enemy like in Shovel Knight. These things are beasts. This campaign also doesn't hide these, not by a hidden passive way, not by beyond 30 special coins per level. Jeez, who thought this was okay? This removes all meaning to the collectible, makes the game linear. Okay, focus. This is about Specter of Torment. Spectre spreads 10 tiny extra effort skulls per level, and by just stomping through the level you'll find about 4 to 5 of these, but you can find them all if you're looking closely. The way to get these is right outside your hub entrance, and the game also shows you multiple ways to use each one just as you get it. And to be honest, I might not like tutorials, but this was fun, and understanding how to get all the gold within the little bonus area helps the player make full use of the item. And the upgrades, which are a bit too easy to get, I barely had time to use the normal relics. But yeah, those upgrades make the things a beasts. This game is meant to be played until you reach godlike status, and when you do there's no way down. But the experience is still fun. Going through walls, slowing time, stacking damage on bosses, stopping all projectiles. Once again, Specter Knight is a game about purely kicking ass. Items are those extra bits to the games that let you try and think one step ahead of the level and try and see if you can use something other than your usual attack to your advantage purely by your own skill and knowledge. Something that's best done once was probably done worse once. Replaying the games is optional in either a New Game Plus mode or just returning to the finished file, as well as some unlockable challenges, and I'm gonna discuss all these free options here. Shovel of Hope's New Game Plus makes you take 2 full hearts of damage whenever you get hit, and also removes all but 2 checkpoints from each stage, one before the mid-stage mini-boss and one before the boss. This mod felt like a proper way to experience the game after beating Shovel Knight, and it doesn't hold anything off. This mod really requires true mastering of the game. Trial and error won't get you far in this one. Returning to your file without starting New Game Plus lets you work on your completion rates, go back and file the music shits you missed and all that. Since the levels are shaped in a way that you'll have fun no matter how you beat them, you don't ever revisit a stage just to see what else can you do there just for fun, because you had your time with it. The challenges are also a good place to test your skill and put a much bigger emphasis on understanding how to use your relics against bosses, which is nice for future playthroughs if you're into that whole jam. I didn't replay Plague of Shadows because I didn't enjoy it, but I think it does the same thing with checkpoints, and there's also challenges and getting all the trillion fucking coins per level, I guess. Moving on. Specter of Torment took so many spins in the first 2 games, and it keeps going. New Game Plus is actually a new challenge since, hey, smart guy, now you beat the game and know how to stomp the world with curios, so just kinda make using those hard. It merges your HP and magic bar so you can't refill your HP with the magic refill item, and slowly drains your magic. But you can't die from that, you get to a minimum, and to my surprise, there's also some cures that still work in that state. But when you're not there, they still drain your magic. It's kinda weird, but it poses threats both for players who had a rough time but still beat the game by, well, being harder, and to more skilled players by making them actually think about what they do. Replaying stages from the normal game is also a ton of fun because you get to mess with items you didn't have unlocked at that point, and the usual collecting, you know. Challenges also serve as a nice method for players who missed out on upgrades or the power of them, since each boss challenge focuses heavily on one of the upgrade heroes, seriously, even a health one. I don't know how they do that. The replay value is pretty strong overall, and the universe the games take place in and the boss challenges are very nice because bosses are, well, let's just say this, bosses are a big thing for games. Especially platformers. Usually dealing damage throughout levels in platformers is towards enemies, basically dodging their attack until we can get close and personal, or the more, you know, like it's with gold armors, where it's a head-to-head tactic. But bosses are a big change. It's no longer about getting to the other end of the screen, it's using all the tidbits of combat you used in the 2 to 10 minute long attempt series. Let's get a bit more in depth. Shovel Hope's bosses are often preferably fought using an item from earlier in the stage or the previous world part, as those are the items the game can rely on the fact you have the most. The fact that chain attacks cause Shovel Knight to get pushed back every time he hits the boss cause the fights to stretch for quite a bit longer, and let all bosses show off just about all their moves. And they usually feel like a proper medium to hard challenge compared to their relative stage, and just feel like a fun balanced fight that you can sink some time into. Plague of Shadows is interesting in bosses, since first of all, because it's a boss, you might instinctively remember to use items, so that's nice. And the weapon customization is at its highest function here. Each boss I felt like was optimally fought with very different combinations from one another. I'm sure this was in the dev's mind, but since you don't get the items from within the levels, you need to figure out each one of these optimal ideas by yourself, and I think that makes a ton of bosses much more challenging compared to Shovel Knight, and I like that, I really like that. Then on the complete other end of the spectrum is Specter of Torment. It's here to show you which playable boss is the boss. Curio overuse is at its finest, and you don't get knocked away while swinging, and your swing rate and range is much higher. Swing at the right time and use the damage ability, and you can be a quick kill machine. Just go to Tolu's channel and watch some quick kill videos. Oh my god, I love those. The bosses are a little treat after the already kinda easy levels, and if it wasn't so fun, I'll be real, these battles would have been severely underwhelming. But they are fun, and I think that settles it. So, that was it. The final nail in the coffin, the final bean in the coffee, the final challenges. I'd also like to add that since Spectre is such a quickly played game, I'm okay with it not having overall boss encounters, and all 3 campaigns have annoying Black Knight final fights, annoying-ish Enchantress fights, and really fun yet short final bosses. Had to point the obvious out, but you know. So those were the 5 main categories, and now you're gonna see me sum these up in the most simple way in this table I popped on screen throughout the video. Pause and read it because I'm gonna keep talking in 0 seconds. Shovel Knight is a good campaign I struggled with a ton but enjoyed overall. It's a perfect execution of what they promised with the original Kickstarter, and it's a good heroic tale. Plague Knight is a weird thing to me. Its core design's elements are based on weird controls, janky punishment, and a weird experience. It felt like a kinda rushed game, but it really wasn't, and I cannot understand so many design decisions about it. Weird spin-off about an equally comical character. Spectre Knight is a moderately easy campaign with a ton of fun elements and generally just a pick up and play stomp through thing, and also takes the role of being the most story heavy and world expanding game so far. So what's next? What is left of the world of Shovel Knight? Well, aside from battle mode, right around the ears corner is King Knight. I was gonna go for the 5 things originally, but since we haven't seen enough of the game, I think I'll just say these 3 things. 1. King Knight needs to be serious and direct in gameplay. Plague Knight did a shitty job at it, Spectre did a godlike job at it. All I need to add is that I like how the new tidbit levels allow for more stage gimmicks like we saw in Shovel's campaign, but makes them much less of an annoying learning curve since they're their own small thing. Much more Super Mario World than a single Mega Man stage, if that helps. 2. The story needs to add all remaining NPCs that weren't expanded upon in Specter, like most of the townspeople. From the footage that is up on Yacht Club Games' Twitch, I can confidently say that this is going to be the case for a very high amount of characters, and I can't be happier. And third, since there's finally new bosses and areas, I want to see items and bosses interact more interestingly, and I hope the world will be a bit more open than Shovel and Plague, but of course, not as much as Specter's level order. So yeah, thanks for watching. This was me and my expectations and thoughts about the Shovel Knight game, the main Shovel Knight treasure trove pack, and what am I expecting for it. I'm hyped. If you want to see a ton of interesting things about the design, there's the blog, the Yacht Club blog, where they tell a lot about game design. It's kind of interesting. The Playground one is all over the place, and there's also a ton of new stuff about King of Hearts that are level designed, and that's super interesting. I really recommend you check that out. It's super fun to watch, seriously. Yeah, that was it. High hopes for the Shovel Boys. Thanks for watching. Asbugs. Bye.